justice for all mankind. These are the Super Friends.
It is Saturday morning. It's September of 1980, and it's the dawn of a new decade. And your Super Friends, yes, the Justice League of America, are back on your TV screens. But something's a little different this time around. Superman, well, he isn't fighting Lex Luthor in a grand sweeping narrative. And, well, Batman isn't deciphering a complex plot by the Riddler to steal a historical artifact. Instead, the Man of Steel is wrestling Bigfoot, and the Dark Knight is trying to stop a disgruntled makeup artist turned swamp monster. Welcome to another weird and wacky time with the 5th season of the Super Friends. By 1980, Hanna-Barbera's definitive superhero epic had already undergone multiple identity crises over the years. It went from a slow-paced, non-violent, moral message show in 1973 to an explosive universe-spanning battle against the Legion of Doom by 1978. But as the new decade dawned, the political, cultural and financial landscape of Saturday morning television had really shifted beneath the feet of the world's greatest superheroes.
Times they are changing.
The result was the 1980 season simply titled Super Friends, an era that stripped away the half-hour epic format in favour of a rapid-fire 7-minute animated shorts. It is a season that remains deeply nostalgic, strangely chaotic and somewhat forgotten by casual fans, serving as a fascinating time capsule of an animation industry in transition. To understand why the 1980 season looks and feels different to all the other seasons before it, we have to look back at the corporate and cultural forces that really kept shaping this show as the years went on. And by 1980, the production costs of animation, well, animating those massive ensembles like the Legion of Doom, forced Hanna-Barbera to really rethink their strategy, steering the production towards a highly localized episodic format that could maximize efficiency. And as such, ABC pivoted again on the format and realized that children's attention spans were changing, and the syndication markets actually favored shorter, punchier segments that could easily be repackaged and rerun on other stations later on. This led to the greenlighting of the 5th season, which abandoned the traditional 22-minute episode structure entirely to experiment with this more fast-paced anthology format. The 5th season of the Super Friends premiered on the ABC network on the 13th of September 1980 and wrapped up its initial broadcast run on the 1st of November 1980. Now, while that sounds like an incredibly short run, no less, the season actually consisted of 8 half-hour broadcasted episodes. However, each of those 8 episodes was divided into 3 distinct self-contained 7-minute animated shorts, now giving us a total of 24 brand new segments. And to fill out the rest of the hour-long broadcast that they used to do, they would mix it up with some of the older episodes and rotate them in like a rerun situation, so you get a new episode and a rerun episode from previous seasons of the franchise, giving kids this real mix of the old and new.
Best of both worlds.
I like that.
The broadcast schedule was highly competitive, with ABC placing the Super Friends as a cornerstone of its Saturday morning lineup to combat rival networks that were actually starting to begin seeing some success with the likes of their shows like Mighty Mouse, and Fat Albert on CBS, and the Flintstones and Jetsons on NBC. This shorts-based format proved to be incredibly resilient, establishing a production blueprint with Hanna-Barbera that would actually stick for the next few years, carrying the franchise through what is historically called the shorts era. Behind the scenes, the show was overseen by executive producers, William Hanna and Joseph Barbera, of course, with a longtime animation director, Oscar Dufar, leading the creative charge. Now, the writing staff, which included a veteran television animation writer, Jeffrey Scott, who served as the head writer and story editor for the entire season of the show, had to completely change their approach to storytelling. Writing a superhero story that begins, develops, and wraps up in exactly 7 minutes, meaning cutting out all the unnecessary exposition in the episode. So the heroes had to encounter a problem within the first 30 seconds and solve it in the next 6 minutes.
Whoa, that was quick.
Then there was the stellar voice cast, which remained the same as the seasons before it, featuring the legendary performances of, yes, none other than Danny Dark as Superman, Casey Kasem as Robin, Olin Soleil as Batman, Shannon Farren as Wonder Woman, William Calloway as Aquaman, Louise Williams as Jaina, and Michael Bell, who voiced both Zane and Gleek. However, production was a constant battle against budget constraints and tight deadlines. To save money, Hanna-Barbera heavily relied on outsourcing a portion of their animation production to overseas studios, particularly in Australia and Asia. And while this shift drastically lowered the production budgets, it, well, let's face it, famously led to a lot of inconsistencies in the animation quality and visual goofs, like, the usual things: inverted character suit colors or missing costume details altogether, that often plagued these classic Saturday morning shows. And of course, the network censorship also remained a factor for the show. While the characters could use their powers dynamically, they still couldn't actually engage in any direct, brutal, hand-to-hand fisticuffs in the show. This is why so many episodes involved the heroes really, using their environment or their creative power combinations to either trap or outsmart a villain rather than throwing a punch.
Whatever, I just want to punch stuff!
When the 1980 season debuted, the reception from the network was actually highly positive. The short form format delivered exactly what ABC wanted: high energy content that keeps younger viewers glued to their screens through those commercial breaks. Ratings remained strong enough to justify keeping the franchise alive and keep that train rolling, ensuring that the Super Friends brand remained a Saturday morning powerhouse as the new decade started. Critical reception at the time was, well, rarely a consideration for any Saturday morning cartoons, as many mainstream television critics largely really didn't review any of these sort of things. So, however, the fan reaction from the comic book purist was, well, to say a bit mixed at best. After getting a taste of the epic comic accurate storylines in the most awesome challenge of the Super Friends, some of the older kids felt that the 7-minute shorts about Aquaman fighting a crude oil monster or the Flash tackling a disgruntled movie makeup artist was a massive step backwards. Now, despite these criticisms, the show was actually a major commercial success in the terms of its longevity. It easily defeated much of its animation competition. That this season proved that, well, it really proved that the Justice League characters had immense staying power when it came to keeping the fans entertained. This season also features a treasure trove of bizarre pop culture references and some odd villain choices. We only get an appearance by 3 classic villains from the Justice League's Rogues Gallery, which included the Riddler, Bizarro, and Mxyzptlk. And all the other villains were totally original and deeply weird and wonderful threats for the Justice League, like the rock and roll space bandits who paralyzed the Super Friends using hypnotic rock music, or a swarm of termites from Venus. A popular urban legend among fans for years was this was the season that was supposed to introduce the iconic Latino superhero El Dorado right out of the gate. To bring more cultural diversity to the lineup, he didn't actually make his official debut until the following year's episodes in the 1981 season. However, the 1980 season perfectly laid the groundwork for the expanded, diverse roster of frequent guest starring heroes, like, yes, some of our favourites, Apache Chief, Black Vulcan, and Samurai, alongside the usual core lineup. 4 decades, finding the complete 1980 season of the Super Friends on physical media was an absolute nightmare, to say the least, for collectors. During the VHS era of the 80s and the 90s, companies like Warner Home Video and Hanna-Barbera Video only released, shall we say, scattered episodes on various compilation tapes, often mixing the 1980s shorts with episodes from other seasons under very generic titles. But the definitive release finally arrived during that DVD boom, and Warner Home Video released the entire 5th season, yes, here it is, on the 23rd of July 2013, under the title Super Friends Season 5, A Dangerous Fate. This was a complete release containing all 24 shorts, presenting them in their original full-screen aspect ratio. The packaging featured the classic comic-style artwork of the core team, which doesn't look too bad, and the set, well, this one unfortunately did not include any special features on any of the discs like the previous releases. Now, more recently, on the 10th of September 2024, Warner Brothers released a remastered Blu-ray set of the entire Super Friends series in this nice, beautiful box set of all 93 episodes from all 9 seasons, all remastered for Blu-ray, providing a major improvement in picture and sound quality. And of course, as of now, there hasn't been no plans for any 4K release.
That's what you said the last time, and the time before that.
Now for me, I know this was out on TV when I was in my prime Super Friend watching period as a kid, and I feel like some of these episodes actually do seem familiar, but only some. But the intro, on the other hand, was definitely in my memory, so I would be pretty certain that I actually watched this season as a kid, but just remembered bits and pieces, shall we say, and rewatching it all again just made me feel like a kid again. And the short quick episodes were good. They just kept me interested all the way through, as I pretty much binged the whole thing, every episode in one sitting. I would be lying if I didn't mention that it was kind of disappointing that we really only got 3 of the top tier villains show up in this episode, and instead we got a lot of the same generic and downright weird enemies for the Super Friends to face off. You know, from like a gang of Bigfoots to African vampires to so many generic alien invaders. Hell, I am pretty sure, if I remember rightly, there was an alien invader short every episode. So out of the 3 shorts, at least one of them was an alien invader. But even with that, the episodes absolutely powered along and were actually really fun to watch. These are a great time machine to take you back to being a kid. Now, as a score goes, look, I would say this one's actually, for me, actually an 8 out of 10. It's a good bunch of fun episodes that give you a heap of Super Friend adventures and a whole heap of nostalgia really thrown in extra.
Even nostalgia has its limits.
The legacy of the 1980 season of the Super Friends is far more significant than the simple 7-minute structures might suggest. Within the broader context of animation history, this season, shall we say, proved that superhero media didn't really need to conform to a single storytelling format to be successful. It showed that short, bite-sized superhero adventures could be just as memorable as multi-part epics. Now, over time, the fans have celebrated it as a great example of that pure Saturday morning charm, while it was once dismissed as campy filler between the high-stakes action of the late 70s to the toy-driven superpower era of the mid-80s. I mean, ultimately, Season 5 of the Super Friends stands as, how can you put it, a beautifully chaotic monument to a bygone era of television. It was a time when the world's greatest superheroes could shift from saving the entire planet from a wandering black hole to saving a local town from an army of, yep, you guessed it, giant man-eating tomatoes. Without missing a single beat. The 1980s season may be a bit strange, a bit rushed, and incredibly campy at times, but it remains a joyful, nostalgic reminder of the days when all it took to save the world was a little bit of imagination and a free Saturday morning.
This Saturday, awesome!
Next week on the show, we are going to look at the extremely rare Generation X TV movie pilot from 1996, so you don't want to miss that one at all. Thanks for watching.